The morning air buzzed with the sound of traffic and honking horns as Sophia, dressed in an expensive coat and heels, stood impatiently by her luxury car. The engine had died in the middle of a busy street, and people were staring. Frustration boiled over when the mechanic arrived, a young man in greasy overalls, wiping his hands on a rag. He gave her a polite nod. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll take a look." But Sophia barely let him finish. "Do you even know what you're doing?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "You look like you barely finished school." The mechanic stayed quiet, focusing on the engine. His silence only fueled her anger. "Shut up, you illiterate!" she shouted, loud enough for a few passers-by to hear. There was a pause. The mechanic finally lifted his head, his eyes calm but firm. And then, to everyone's surprise, he spoke, not in English, but in flawless German. "Bit bleiben Sie ruhig. Ich möchte nur meinen Job," he said smoothly, which translated to "Please stay calm. I'm just doing my job." Sophia's mouth fell open. Whispers spread among the small crowd gathering nearby. People exchanged glances, astonished that the man she had mocked so harshly had just revealed a side she never imagined. For the first time, Sophia felt a flush of shame. She had judged him without knowing anything about him. And in that moment, the mechanic, without raising his voice, had shifted the entire balance of power. The silence after his German reply seemed to echo louder than the city noise. Sophia blinked, her arrogance dissolving into confusion. "Wait, you speak German?" she stammered. The mechanic nodded, his hands still working carefully on the engine. "Yes. And French. And Spanish too." His tone wasn't boastful, just matter-of-fact. The onlookers murmured in admiration. One man whispered, "Did you hear that? He's fluent." Sophia's face burned. For the first time in years, she felt small, not because of her wealth, but because of her behavior. She cleared her throat. How do you know so many languages?" The mechanic gave a faint smile. "Because before I came here, I studied engineering in Berlin. I wanted to build machines that help people. But when my father died, I left school to take care of my family. This job, fixing cars, it pays the bills." Sophia froze, her hand tightening on her designer handbag. She had assumed he was beneath her, someone with no education, no ambition. But here he was, a man who had sacrificed his dreams out of love and responsibility. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. I didn't know." The mechanic shrugged lightly, his eyes kind. "You didn't ask." The car engine suddenly roared back to life, startling everyone. The mechanic wiped his hands, stepping back with quiet pride. But it wasn't just the car he had fixed, it was something deeper. A piece of Sophia's heart shifted, cracking open in a way she hadn't expected. The woman who had barked insults now found herself humbled by a man she had dismissed as illiterate. And for the first time in years, she felt the sting of regret, and the spark of respect. Sophia sat quietly in the back seat of her now-repaired car, but she didn't start the engine. Her fingers traced the leather steering wheel as if searching for words. The mechanic stood nearby, wiping the grease from his hands, ready to leave. Finally, she called out, her voice softer than before. "Wait! What's your name?" He looked up, surprised. "Daniel. Daniel." She repeated it, almost tasting the humility she hadn't shown earlier. "Listen, about what I said." "You don't have to explain," Daniel interrupted gently. "People see a uniform and assume they know your story. I've gotten used to it." But Sophia's chest ached with guilt. She had built her empire on being sharp, decisive, untouchable. Yet here she was, feeling like the smallest person in the world. "I was wrong," she admitted, her voice trembling. "And cruel. You didn't deserve that." Daniel gave a small smile, as though forgiving her was easier than holding a grudge. "Life's too short to carry anger," he said simply. Those words pierced Sophia's heart. For years she had carried her own bitterness, using arrogance as armor against loneliness. She had money, yes, but no true friends, no family waiting at home. Daniel, with his worn boots and rough hands, seemed richer in spirit than she had ever been. "Do you?" She hesitated, surprising even herself. "Want to have coffee sometime? Just to talk. I'd like to hear more about Berlin." Daniel raised an eyebrow, amused by the sudden invitation, but he saw sincerity in her eyes. After a pause, he nodded. "Sure. Why not?" In that moment, a strange warmth filled the air. For the first time in years, Sophia wasn't thinking about contracts or profits. She was thinking about a man who had just shown her what dignity truly meant. The cafe Daniel chose wasn't one Sophia would normally step into. It was small, tucked away on a quiet corner, with chipped wooden tables and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. She looked out of place in her designer coat, but for the first time in years she didn't care. Daniel arrived carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "They make the best here," he said, sliding one toward her. Sophia lifted it to her lips, then laughed. "It's stronger than what I'm used to." "That's because it's real," Daniel teased. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of clinking cups and soft jazz surrounding them. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice low. "You know, when you spoke German yesterday, it wasn't just the words. It was the confidence. The pride. I don't see that often." Daniel's expression softened. "My father taught me. He was a teacher back home. I was supposed to follow in his footsteps, but life had other plans." Sophia leaned forward. "What happened?" "My parents passed away suddenly," he said, his voice steady. "I came here for work, sent money back to relatives, but teaching turned into fixing engines. It's honest work, though." Sophia's chest tightened. She had everything, a mansion, a company, endless wealth, yet she had never known such quiet strength. "You're more educated than half the board members I sit with," she admitted, shaking her head. "And yet I treated you like—" Daniel interrupted with a small smile. "A lesson, maybe? Sometimes we don't realize what we've become until life puts a mirror in front of us." Sophia blinked, fighting the sting in her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a billionaire, but as a human being. The next morning, Sophia walked into her office, but her mind wasn't on her schedule or the stack of contracts waiting on her desk. It was on Daniel, the mechanic who spoke fluent German, who carried himself with quiet dignity, who reminded her of something she had long forgotten: humility. Her assistant entered, announcing, "The board is ready for you, ma'am." Sophia smoothed her blazer and stepped into the meeting room. The directors, all older men in polished suits, looked up expectantly. But as they began discussing profits and expansion, Sophia's thoughts drifted back to Daniel's words. Sometimes we don't realize what we've become until life puts a mirror in front of us. Halfway through the meeting, she interrupted. "Gentlemen, tell me, how many of you have ever fixed your own car? Or spoken to the janitor by name? Or asked the waitress how her day is?" The room fell silent. "Because yesterday, I insulted a man who is more educated, more disciplined, and more honorable than many of us sitting here. A mechanic. A human being who deserves respect." The directors shifted uncomfortably. Sophia continued, her voice unwavering. "If this company only measures success in numbers, then we are poorer than the people we look down on." After the meeting, she left the tower of glass and steel and drove straight to the mechanic's shop. Daniel looked up from beneath the car, wiping grease from his hands. "You again?" he asked, smiling faintly. "Yes, me," Sophia replied, her voice trembling but sincere. "I came to say thank you. Not just for fixing my car, but for fixing my perspective." For the first time in years, she felt lighter. Daniel just nodded. "Respect, it costs nothing, but it changes everything." And in that moment, Sophia knew her life would never be the same.